Where are you listening from? And what time is it there right now? Drop it in the comments below. Let's see how many time zones are riding along with us tonight. The story unfolds 30,000 feet in the air, somewhere between New York and Phoenix, with Nia and Tiana Coleman sliding into first class. Row 1A and 1B, crisp boarding passes in hand. All business and cool confidence until the cabin's hush is split by the clipped voice of Ruth Lancaster, a flight attendant who polishes her authority the way some people polish their shoes. Get up. These seats aren't for you. Every head turns. Every phone screen forgets what it was doing. Even the baby in 9C stops mid-wail, tiny fists frozen like he's about to call a lawyer. If you've ever felt a room's temperature drop without the AC turning on, you'll recognize what happens next. Nia, the older sister, meets Ruth's stare, her eyes steady above the rim of her iPad, while Tiana, music still humming from one earbud, blinks like she's misheard the page number. There's confusion, but not panic, the kind of practice composure you only learn by growing up as the daughters of a black tech CEO who made sure his kids understood own the room doesn't come with a return policy. Their seats were paid in full, booked weeks ahead. No abrazos, no silver spoons, not even a complimentary cashew. Just hard-earned confidence and a last name built from scratch in South Central LA. As Ruth demands boarding passes for verification, a small civil war erupts between politeness and presumption, with each line of protocol feeling like a hedge maze where some people are meant to get lost. Nia, calm as an airport yoga mat, refuses to budge, while Tiana, sharper now, dares Ruth to say the quiet part out loud. From row 3, Paul Henderson, recently retired bank president and amateur grudge holder, watches with a face that's never quite learned to be neutral, convinced first class is a country club where membership is self-evident. It's a scene that's played out before, but this time, it's viral in real time. Phones tilt, whispers dart, and somewhere near the galley, even Kenny, the junior flight attendant, pauses, torn between his job and his conscience. Here's a quirky tidbit for you historians still argue whether airplane class wars started with seats, dress codes, or the invention of the complimentary hot towel. Some say it was all downhill after the peanuts got smaller. But right now, in this compressed metal tube, the only thing shrinking is people's willingness to look away. Ruth's voice drops, passengers fidget, and the pressure builds, not with shouts, but with pauses, those long, dangerous gaps where the story decides if it's going to be a footnote or a headline. The air gets heavier. First class has never felt so cramped, not even during turbulence or when they try to serve soup. Nia sits taller, chin up, the quiet edge in her posture saying, "We're not moving." Ruth, clutching her manifest tablet like it's a badge, hesitates just long enough for everyone to sense it's not really about a technical error. From the rear, Kenny edges forward, his own tablet glowing, ready to play referee, while Paul in row 3 shifts with the restless energy of a man who's always expected his problems to be solved by someone else's apology. The showdown stalls, and suddenly Elena Ruiz, retired middle school teacher from Albuquerque, stands up slow, steady, arm on the seat back, ready to give a pop quiz in justice. "Why are you questioning these young women and not anyone else?" she asks, voice calm as a yoga instructor with tenure. Ruth, caught between rules and reason, tries to recite protocol, but Elena won't let her off the hook. It's the kind of intervention scholars still debate. At what precise moment does a bystander become an ally? Some say it happens in the blink before the voice cracks, others in the second after silence falls. Either way, Elena tips the balance, and suddenly people start nodding, a quiet wave of "not on my watch." Kenny double-checks the manifest click. Scroll. Confirm. Seats 1A and 1B, Nia and Tiana Coleman. Booked 3 weeks ago. No abrazos. He reads, his words landing like a judge's gavel. finally giving the truth the floor. Phones blink red. Tiana's already live. And somewhere in the digital ether, hashtags bloom. The sister's calm doesn't break. But there's a new sharpness in Nia's eyes, the exhaustion of being asked. Once again, to prove what the paperwork already says. The captain's voice interrupts. A surprise descent announced. Unscheduled landing in Denver for operational review. The speculation buzzes louder than a tray of seltzers. As the plane touches down and the jet bridge latches on, the world's longest minute ticks by until David Coleman himself, dressed down but unmistakable, steps into the aisle. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't have toe disappointment, is an art form in the hands of a father who's built empires and girls who won't be moved. Ruth stands rooted. The captain relieves her of duty, and the walk of shame is slow, silent, and very well documented by half the cabin. Paul, that would-be usurper in 3C, is left pale and slumped as his wife quietly whispers, "Say something." David Coleman looks him right in the eye and tells him, "You were part of this." It's the kind of line that sticks, one that echoes long after the seatbelt sign turns off. All of it's captured, streamed, trending by the time the wheels lift again. Historians still argue whether social change happens one confrontation at a time or all at once. But for everyone on Flight 309, the lesson is clear: truth flies faster than denial, and dignity doesn't wait for permission to take its seat. As Flight 309 touches down in Phoenix, the entire cabin exhales, some in relief, others in reflection. Phones buzz with news alerts. The Coleman sisters' stand is already headline fodder. And by dinner time, the story floods every feed. Sky West Atlantic releases a polished statement. All corporate concern and full investigation. But the world attention has already jumped the fence. Social media is ablaze with row one respect and fly with dignity, while former crew members chime in with their own tales, most involving awkward apologies and slightly less heroic snacks. Meanwhile, Ruth Lancaster sits alone in her small apartment, lost in the swirl of her own infamy. She reads articles that name her as a symbol, sometimes a villain, sometimes just a product of a broken system. At first, she resists, insisting to herself she was only doing her job. But the footage is damning, and her reflection in the mirror is suddenly harder to square with her favorite stories about herself. So she signs up for workshops, one after another, learning what they never taught at flight school: how justice doesn't always land quietly, how apology isn't the same as repair. Ruth volunteers at a community center, coaching job seekers who remind her a little too much of the sisters from row one. And eventually, she talks about that flight, admitting what she can't excuse. "I thought I was keeping order." But whose order? Really? Paul Henderson takes longer to confront the truth. Days go by before Judith nudges him out of denial. "This is your legacy now." Like it or not, he journals, sees a therapist, even calls old colleagues he once sidestepped in board meetings. The idea takes root that maybe privilege isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the confidence to assume row one is reserved. 3 months later, he starts the 1A initiative, a scholarship for first-generation students, hoping to tip the scales a bit, though he knows the past doesn't vanish just because you try to balance it out. The sisters, Nia and Tiana, never meant to start a movement. They just wanted to get where they were going. Headphones in, emails queued up, dignity intact. But the world took their refusal to move and turned it into a mirror, forcing a country to look twice at what it means to belong. For some, the biggest lesson is that bias doesn't always snarl. Sometimes it sounds like protocol, posture, or just the tiniest pause before believing someone's earned their place. Historians still argue whether justice works best in the courts, the headlines, or the quiet conviction of refusing to get up. The story of Flight 309 lives on it in the headlines. not in the trending hashtags, but in the small choices made every day. The teacher who speaks up, the bystander who records, the executive who quietly shifts hiring practices, the traveler who stays seated, no matter who doubts them. Each action is a ripple, and the cabin isn't quite the same, even after the seatbelts unbuckle and the world moves on. As the last suitcase thumps onto the carousel, the tension of that flight softens, and the world tilts gently back to normal. Night falls across Phoenix, and even the most restless hearts begin to settle, stories weaving into dreams as softly as cabin lights dim for landing. The lesson lingers: dignity isn't fragile, belonging doesn't expire, and justice, no matter how delayed, always finds a way to board. Wherever you are, let this reminder wrap around you. Every seat you've earned is yours to claim, and every quiet stand can echo farther than you think. Sweet dreams.